the assessment moved at the end of last year to be in year, looking at year 8 versus a multi-year band. What we're focused on is making sure we fix the problem, and whether it's 45% or whether it's 22%, we've got a problem in maths. And when we can actually cut it year by year and we see 3 out of our 5 kids are actually a year or more behind, 4 out of 5 are actually not at the standard they need to be to take on high school, that's a big problem. That's why we've moved very fast.
For consistency purposes, wouldn't it be better to use the assessment data that goes with the correct curriculum?
I would just say to you, outside of this place, in New Zealand, if you're a parent, you want to know that your kids are actually where they need to be at the standard they need to be at going into high school. And when 4 out of 5 of our kids in year 8 are not at the math standard, that's a big problem. And we can debate and discuss that all day long if you want to, inside baseball process conversations, or we actually go out there and we fix it for New Zealanders, and that's what we're doing.
Are schools going to have to defer their art and music curriculums in order to prioritise maths?
We've made it very clear there's must-do stuff and there's nice-to-do stuff, and we want everything focused on the must-do. And at the moment, that means teaching our kids to read and teaching them to do mathematics. And if everything else has to be delayed as a consequence of that, so be it.
We do know that there is a gap here around between years 4 and 8. Kids seem to lose progress in areas like maths and literacy during that time. But we've got really good objective data that goes back over a longer period so that we can benchmark and we can compare results from year to year. The data they're using now doesn't have any historical comparators. We can't benchmark that against anything because it's literally data that's been made up from assessing kids against a standard that they haven't been taught.
The Prime Minister said that he doesn't care if other curriculums, like in art or music, are delayed in favour of maths. Do you think there's anything to be concerned about there in terms of neglecting other subjects?
Well, the government talks about wanting to follow evidence. If you're following evidence in education, all the evidence is pretty clear. If kids are learning from a balanced curriculum, then they're more likely to succeed than if you're teaching them a very narrow curriculum. Other countries around the world who have tried to narrow down the curriculum, policies like No Child Left Behind in the US are really good examples of this. You actually see overall student achievement going backwards in the areas that you're trying to improve because you narrow down the focus so much. If we want our kids' educational achievement to improve, they have to be learning from a balanced curriculum.
So there you go. Thanks to RNZ for that. How about no even questions, Pat? Your response to what you've just heard.
Well, a couple of things. One, first, for the first time, Chris Hipkins actually spoke 100% truth. I couldn't believe it. Not that, it says he tells lies, but the whole lot of it was very valid. The other point that I'd like to make is that I can't understand how a person who has no understanding of education is making educational decisions. Mm-hmm. I really just can't. A man that can stand up there and say arts, music, etc., social studies, science are not important is beyond me, absolutely beyond me. And I think what's very unfair is that he is marginalising and scaring parents. And this is the problem we've had. This government has marginalised and scared parents about the lack of achievement and the lack of that. Can I jump to the chase straight away and say to you, the year 8 kids he's talking about, they started learning mathematics under the national government's last great experiment called National Standards.
Yeah.
And at that time, the professionals like myself got up and said, if you go down this track, you'll have problems. They didn't listen. We now have some problems about that year 8 time. And now they're proposing another thing that's not going to work. It's loony bins time, but it's our kids that these people are playing with. Yeah. What people forget is that data was taken from around about the 2022. Guess what was happening then? In 2022, where were most of the kids? They were in and out of school. They were at home half the time because it was the middle of COVID. I'm not saying that mathematics is where it should be, all right? I'm not saying that, or even language. But what I am saying is we've been screaming for help from all governments, both Labour and National, for years, 30 that I can think of, saying you removed all the support for teaching curriculum and helping teachers know curriculum. It was called the advisory services. Roger Douglas and his mates Preble decided it was better to give fly-by-night contracts to come in and do it, to teach teachers how to do it. They removed all the supports. And we've been screaming out and saying, give us back the advisory services. If they turned around now and said, look, we're going to really listen, we know you need help, we know that not every kid is succeeding, then we, instead of spending I think it's about 80 million now they're talking, and a few other 100 million they're wasted elsewhere, if they said, we'll turn that into giving advisory services so you have people in all curriculum areas in your schools, whenever you need them, following up with you, working in your classroom beside your teachers, showing you how to update, I would have been applauding them. I would have been applauding them. Instead, so he can make a big announcement in front of his National Party meeting on Sunday, he used our children as cannon fodder. He brought up the mathematics thing before anyone was even ready. The ministry didn't even know he was making the announcement, or the ones out in the regions didn't know. But he needed something to look big. And he used our kids. And he talks about how it will be great because every kid will be getting taught the same. Good God, man, has he got no kids? Which kids all learn the same? What is the difference between some of our kids who may be under trauma, may be under abuse, all those sort of things? What's the difference between kids that are bright and slow? About special needs, about neurodiversity? Is the man bloody well cuckoo? If he is, he shouldn't be running the country.
Look, on that point, well, I was going to share this later on, but he was on breakfast this morning as well, talking about structured mathematics. He goes, it's good because it's a consistent way to do several things, including, this is what he said.
But actually having a consistent way of teaching both maths and reading is important, and it helps all kids that are struggling, and certainly kids that need to be extended.
So, consistent way of teaching it. I mean, look,
Teach by numbers, page 1 to 5 today, page 6 to 10 tomorrow.
Yeah.
If you miss a page, you are held back. Too bad.
Because surely the way kids learn is all different. I mean, I'm not saying surely like asking, we know that. So how can you have a one-size-fits-all teaching model if kids all learn differently?
Look, just on reading alone, we know there are 27, probably more, but at least 27 different ways of teaching reading. And some of the experts actually said in the past, most kids need a bit of all the 27.
Right.
And I have got nothing, for instance, in reading around phonics that's needed for some kids. It's bloody great for some kids and they need it. In fact, all kids need a bit of it. Mm-hmm. But to say it's the only way to teach, we might as well just shove them in front of the computer and let them follow, page 1, as I said, page 2, page 3. It means my profession is not allowed to do what we know. Can you imagine him standing up and saying, we're going to tell the surgeons how to actually take a heart out and put it back into a person? Not just this is what you'll do and how often, but this is exactly the steps you'll take. What makes him think he's got the mandate to say that?